Welcome back to the Not Your Mama podcast. This is your host, Kelly Bryant, and I am joined today by Riana Milne. Hi, Riana.
Hi, Kelly. How you doing? Hi,
I am
everyone.
wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
I'm so excited to have her with us. She is a certified global life and love trauma recovery coach, a certified clinical trauma and addictions professional, a certified mindfulness coach, and she is the best-selling author of Love Beyond Your Dreams and Live Beyond Your Dreams. She's also a podcast host herself. So I am excited to have her here. Riana, I would love for you to tell us your pronouns and uh, what emoji you most identify as.
Okay. She and hers. And I would say the emoji I send out the most is praying hands, especially in the year of COVID. I work with a lot of people already traumatized by life or love relationships. And, just the praying hands. I think a lot of people needed prayers and reassurance in the past couple of years.
That's been, I think, every coaching session I do inside of my group program. We do
Mhm.
office hours every week. And typically there's a little bit of a theme that we'll discuss. And every week for the last 18 months has been also remember, give yourself grace. Like,
Yeah, for real.
also don't forget, we're doing this all in a highly traumatizing,
Environment,
yes, climate.
world,
So
world.
can you,
Yeah.
that was quite a list of accomplishments. Um, Love Beyond Your Dreams and Live Beyond Your Dreams sound like great books. Like, sign me up. I'm in. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to write those books, what your background is, how you sort of got into trauma related work?
Yeah, well, as a teenager, I was terribly bullied. And I did ask my mom if I could go to see a counselor, and she said, no one in this family will ever go to one. So I swore I would grow up to become one. And I did. And then I went through a trauma at 16 where I lost my very best friend to a drunk driver in a car accident. And I couldn't go to the counselor again. So I turned to books and read a lot about mindset and spirituality. So I was reading Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, The Course of Miracles at 17 years old. So the mindset happened for me very early in life. And at 26, I opened a model and talent agency that I had for 10 years. And I was working with people's mindsets constantly. People who had the goal and the dream to model, act, sing, or dance. And their families or friends or their boyfriends or girlfriends are saying, you can't do that. Why do you think you can be a dancer or a singer or an actor? And I was working with their mindset to help them reach their dreams. And I was even told the school will never go anywhere. It's stupid. It's an Erie, PA. And I said, watch me. Within 6 months, I got educational excellence. Within a year, it got the Model and Talent International Award of the Year. So I have learned this method early on in my 20s and used it for raising my own kids. And after they were raised and launched, my two daughters, who are 38 and 39 now, I went back to school and got a triple master's in applied clinical and counseling psychology and became a licensed mental health counselor in year 2000. So I've been a counselor for 22 years now and going on 22. And I got certified as a coach in 2009 and 10 because I love the coaching model. It's more education and solution focused. And when I had a love trauma with my kid's father, didn't really know what love trauma was, just dealt with it and moved on. And because my mindset was strong. And then I had a second love trauma. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I attracting toxic people? And his last words to me were, I don't know why I sabotage everything I love. And I said, I honestly don't know either. So I got to figure it out because my therapist friends had no idea who know him. And I needed to heal. So my research was my healing, and it was so fascinating, everything I learned. I said, I have to go global with this. And that's how I had the goal to be a coach because I can be global, whereas a therapist, I can only work in Florida.
Mhm.
So I started writing the Live book, the Love book, because they go together. One's about the mindset for success and raising successful kids. Love Beyond Your Dreams is having successful, loving relationships. So they are meant to go together. And then for my clients, I have a 150-page workbook. So I'm a certified clinical trauma professional, and all the work there says it takes about 4 to 6 months, ideally 6 months, of intensely practicing taking the old unconscious thoughts, norms, and behaviors and making you totally consciously aware. So that's what
Six
I do.
months is not long. That's
No, when
a
you look at a
that's a
whole
deal.
lifespan, right? Yeah, for
Yeah.
real. Some people come to me very late in life, like my
Right.
oldest client was 73. So he had 73 years of deprogramming to do for him. And he had 4 wives divorce him, and he was going into his senior years. He goes, I'm going to die alone. Nobody loves me. So we had to get him out of that fear-based negative mindset into empowerment. And he's been with the same lovely lady for 5 years.
Love it.
So it's really great to see people transform their life and find happiness. I just wish he did it years earlier.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think we're saying this word trauma a lot. And,
Mhm.
I like to think that my listeners are pretty enlightened and they mostly kind of understand what that means. But I do think that there's a lot of people who have this knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, I wasn't abused as a child. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't,
Right.
assaulted. So therefore, I don't have trauma. Can you kind of explain what trauma means? And I know you have this list of the different types of trauma. Can you kind of tell us about that?
Yes. Research this year said 100% of us have childhood trauma. Now, when I did it back in 2012 and 11, it would say 9 out of 10 people admit to having some of the top 10 traumas. Um, so trauma is either big T trauma or little t trauma. So big T trauma would be being in a major car accident and breaking 2 legs. It would be, having a parent die early. That's a big traumatic event. Little t trauma are those negative, repetitive, ongoing situations that cause you emotional distress. Okay. And as I go through the list, you'll be able to hear the differences between a big T and a small T trauma. But you can have trauma for the rest of your life with one event, one big event, or one smaller repetitive event over and over and over again. So I'll go in the top 10. And when I do, I want to make sure the listeners know this is not about blaming mom and dad at this point. And it's not about taking any guilt on yourself. And I know I'm talking to parents, right? And I raised 2 daughters, mostly as a single mom. And like I said, I left their father due to financial abuse. He ripped my family off $200,000. So here I'm a 24-year-old single mom with that debt to pay my mother back. And it took 16 years. So, but I couldn't focus on that. I had to focus on raising successful girls, and they totally are very successful, and making sure I could support my family and so on. So let's go into the top 10 traumas. Also, by the way, the research says it goes through 3 generations. So if you had it, your parents have it, and your grandparents had it. How do you stop it? By being totally aware it's existing in your household and healing it for yourself. That's how
I'm really excited to talk about
change it.
intergenerational trauma. Once you tell us the different
Yeah.
types, we're gonna dig into that for sure.
Okay. So here's the first one. It's if your parents or caretakers had any addiction. Now I named 12 of them. There's drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning you knew your parent was a cheater, porn use, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism, and being on your machines too long, phones, computers, laptops, whatever.
There's
Okay.
not a lot of parents that don't have one of those.
Yes, that's right.
At least one.
Okay, number 2. Well, if you live a balanced life, you don't. You're really consciously aware about not being too tied down to any of those, right? Okay, number 2 is your verbal messaging. So you could have seen mom and dad yelling and screaming at each other, and they were modeling, this is how we handle our problems. So if you have a partner or you yourself are yelling and screaming through issues, it's because you learned the wrong way to settle your issues, right? You shouldn't be yelling around your kids. Okay. It also means not hearing the words "I love you," not getting compliments, not getting those support like "Good job, kiddo. It's all right. You didn't win the race. I could see you in there trying your best." Comments like that, kids really, really need for their self-esteem and sense of empowerment. But a lot of kids don't get them. Okay. Number 3 is emotional abuse and neglect. Number 4 is physical abuse of any kind, hitting of any kind. rape or molestation. And again, any of these could have happened inside or outside of the home. Okay. Next one, number 5, is abandonment. And there's 2 types of abandonment: fault and no fault. So a no fault abandonment is like a big T trauma. That's, again, your parent dies early. It could be one of your parents going off to serve in the military. Believe me, I worked in the schools with every grade level, kindergarten through college, as a trauma counselor. And those kids who had parents off to war, their grades went down. They couldn't focus. All they could think about is, my mom or dad okay? Day in, day out, right? So it's a traumatic event for a little person. And then the other one would be if your parent travels a lot for work, but that's how they support the family. Okay. The other one, fault abandonment, is never being involved in your child's life. You were involved until the couple broke up. And then once they broke up, you rarely see your child, or you're making promises and you don't keep them. Or another one is you're physically present in the home, but you're not emotionally attached. This could be an example of a businessman at the office all day, comes home, eats the dinner, then goes in and watches TV in his private office, or goes back to work, but rarely engages with the kids, rarely goes to their school events. Okay, so that's emotional abandonment. The next one is if you're a part of the foster care system, adopted, or had to go live at other people's houses. One of my jobs was working in a mental health ward with kids 5 through 19. I had all the foster care kids. I had kids who lost parents or had to go live at a grandmother's and an aunt's house. Very traumatic for them. Okay, trauma number 7 is one most can identify with. This is called personal trauma. So this is if you felt different in any way. So you could have been born with a medical complication. You could have been a chubby, overweight child, or like me, I was skinny and gawky and called a nerd, right? You could have been the only African-American in an all-Caucasian school, or a gay or lesbian teen trying to come out and identify, and you weren't accepted by your peers or your family. It could have been a cultural situation. So there's so many different reasons people can identify with this personal trauma piece. Trauma 8 is sibling trauma. This is if your sibling bullied you, if they were born with a medical condition, which commanded more of mom's and dad's time. And the other one is if they were perceived by you to be the golden child, the favored one. So more handsome or beautiful, the smarter student, or the star athlete. Okay. Number 9 is 2 parts. One is family trauma, one is community trauma. So community trauma is one we're all going through right now with the COVID pandemic. Okay. This is really going to show up as profound when our little kids are adults and in love and life. They're going to really be craving security, maybe codependency, maybe they're isolators and they can't attach. So it's yet to be seen how this is going to play out. And I have 6 grandchildren now, so I'm worried for my little kids in my life,
I can tell you, I see this play out in births where people are like basically incapable of biologically birthing because they're so afraid. And they don't
Yeah.
know, they would not ever say that they are afraid, but that just like the natural hormonal processes that have to happen, your brain doesn't understand that you are actually safe.
Right. Well, of course. And then going into the hospital, am I going to get COVID? Is my baby going to get COVID? If I get COVID, I can't nurse my baby. My daughter, Alexi, just had her 4th child, a little boy, October 1st. So I kind of went through all that with her.
Mhm.
She's very strong-minded. She's a coach as well. But yeah, I mean, I was worried all year, keeping her in my prayers that she wouldn't get sick with COVID, right? So it's a very traumatic time for the parents on this show.
Mhm.
But so that's community trauma. Also included with that is our Mother Nature events, flood, fires, hurricane, mudslides that wipes out large communities, and our mass shootings and our school shootings. So there's a lot going on in the community. That plays into family trauma, which is part of 9 as well. So, if someone was impacted by COVID with their income, it's impacting now the family. But this could also be a parent was incarcerated. It could be like in the US, our military families move every 2 to 4 years. That puts the child as the new kid in school. which is always a hard transition for a child. It could also be growing up with a lot of lack or in poverty or in dangerous neighborhoods. There's many under that one. Those are just a few examples. And then trauma 10 is mental health issues in mom or dad. And the two most difficult for children to navigate is bipolar and borderline personality disorder. So in straight language, easy language, borderline is erratic moods. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid, and you never know what you're going to get. These people explode at the littlest things no one else would get mad over. So it keeps a child very anxious. And then the other one, bipolar, can show up the depression in anger, extreme fatigue, or just checking out. And a manic phase is a high and happy phase, but it's also tied to an addiction, like a drinking spree, binge, or binge gambling, or spending, something like that. So there are more than 10 traumas, but these are the top 10 that I saw with my populations between the schools, the mental health ward, and working in drug and alcohol facilities, one for teens and one from women from the prison system. So then I put that top 10 list together in 2012.
So we touched on it a little bit kind of before you went into that list. I would assume the question I'm going to ask you is like, how do these show up as adults? And I would assume a lot of that is that we pass them down. Like we do that which has been done to us. And that's where intergenerational trauma comes from loosely.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about what is intergenerational trauma, that whole, like, it gets passed down 3 times, that thing, and maybe other ways that these traumas then show up when we're adults?
Yeah, I mean, when I first see a client for a discovery session, I do 1 hour solid with 5 assessments that I have to really dive deep into what they experienced as a child. And then I have to ask about mom and dad and what they experienced. So if we had a very cold, detached mother, she might have been beaten by her alcoholic father. And her mother was depressed because she was in an alcoholic marriage, right? So there's the grandparents dynamic playing to the mother, and the mother is cold and detached to the client, right? So we have to do a deep dive into the 3-generation dynamics. And then the client has some empathy about, wow, yeah, my mom went through a hard time. My dad went through a hard time. I'm starting to understand. But when they come to me, they usually are coming out of a very traumatic relationship. They usually hang in there longer than they want to because they have kids, like I did. I did not want to break up my family, but I also could not be tortured. So it's one or the other, and I was reading a lot of psychology books back then, and they always said it's better to have a 1-parent home than a home where there's a lot of stress and anger and yelling. And that's why I decided to leave when my girls were young. But this can show up.
I feel like we could just repeat that over and over and over
right.
again. Like,
yeah.
If you hear nothing else, know that if you are in
a traumatic situation, yes, abuse of any kind, verbal, physical, financial, intimidation, difficulty with the parent to the children, it's better that you're a single parent. Yeah, moving on. Okay, so it can show up in adults in love relationships as jealousy, control. If you had trauma number 7, didn't feel worthy enough or good enough, and those verbal messages, not hearing a lot of compliments. It could show up as people pleasing. If you had a very difficult, let's say, alcoholic mom, you were the older sister, you got up and took care of all the kids, got them out to the bus, so at least you wouldn't be yelled at and the siblings were safe. So you're into that people pleasing to get some kind of love. Abandonment issues, if you had those, that can show up as a codependency, or what we call RRS, relationship repetition syndrome. So that would mean your conscious mind is saying, I know this person's no good for me, I have to break up, but your craving for love is so strong that, you get back together. And the research shows an average of breaking up and getting back together is 7 times. So it keeps repeating, and then it's good for a while. The good time is about 10 to 14 days. And then something happens, the explosion, the fighting, and this is the cycle.
7 times.
Yeah, that they're stuck in. And again, the kids are watching the parent in and the house, out of the house.
So of course, they're learning that this is how relationships work.
Yeah. So it's not good modeling, of course. Perfectionism, control, blaming behavior, impulsivity. These are other ways it shows up within relationships, right? Mm-hmm. So you hear all the time someone saying, I'll never marry someone like my dad who is abusive and an alcoholic, but they end up marrying someone addicted to pot. And it's like that same personality type. So why does that happen? Because the unconscious knows and likes what it knows. It likes what it's come from. So this was what we call homeostasis. The brain, the unconscious, will go for the familiar. Mm-hmm. It's a survival strategy. Right. But if you're not fully consciously aware and we're making the conscious mind stronger than those unconscious urges, you're going to repeat the patterns of toxic partners.
There was a couple you said there, the self-esteem one, and then also the personal trauma of feeling different mm-hmm. or feeling not good enough. Those ones I see all the time showing up in people's dietary habits, people's movement habits. They're like, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to make myself lovable. Mm-hmm. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's always aiming. And it shows up in work, all right, in mm-hmm. career as well.
Perfectionism, yeah.
Yeah, the perfectionism, or the other side, if you came from lack and we don't have enough money messages, mm-hmm. people go so far, then they might sabotage, or they're like, well, I don't want to invest in myself to learn this. Like, what if it doesn't work? What if I don't make it? What if I fail? Then I threw that money away. So the lack of belief that they can do it comes from those messages. And like I said, I saw that early on at 26 when I had the talent school. Mm-hmm. Like I had a large size girl come to me, 23, very pretty girl. And she goes, I really want to learn to do this and be a plus size model. I said, what size are you? She said, a 23. I said, working with me, are you inspired to get to a size 16, 18? She goes, I can do it. I said, then we will put you in the plus size division. And she modeled for Ford special sizes, made a ton of money. But her family messages was, what are you doing that for? You're fat. Look in the mirror. You're throwing your money away. So, we had to fight those messages. So what you say to your children is so utterly important. And let me tell you a good story from the other side. My daughter, Alexi, was watching Save the Children commercial. She was 5 years old. And she goes, Mom, I'm going to go to Africa and save those kids one day. And I said, babe, I totally believe you will. You're smart. You got a heart of gold. You'll figure out how to do that. And it's like a 5-year-old with her dreams, right? But I validated those dreams. So at 15, I heard it again. Mom, I want to be a pop singer, because this is the time of Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So she was watching them. She goes, I want to do this. I'm like, let's do it. Okay. So now I'm a talent agent, but I didn't really represent singers, but it's like, we have to learn this together. So we worked on it together. We read the books. And the world just aligned. Like I ran into this top artist in a club in Miami, told him about my daughter. She's interviewing with someone else who we ran into surprisingly at an NBA playoff situation. So it's like everything just lined up when we decided this is what she was going to do. She goes on world tour, ends up in Africa, looks down from the tour bus and said, I want to come back and help these people. And I'm going to figure out what they need. So since then, she has 21 water wells in Tanzania, Africa, her and her best friends. So it's a really beautiful story of when you believe in your kids' dreams and nurture it, let them go for it, And the sad thing was when she wanted to be a singer, her father said, you think you're going to be an effing singer? That's a joke. And I said, watch me. That's all you have to do. Decide in your mind, mm-hmm. you can do this, and together we'll do it. And her determination was there.
I have to know, how do you change that though, right? So you grew up that way.
Well, not my daughters though. See, I changed it. I changed it for my girls. I grew up not hearing the words, I love you, and never hearing a compliment. The first compliment I heard was when my book went to #1 bestseller. First time. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, wow, thanks, Mom. Like I got a compliment. So I wanted to be the mom I didn't have. right? I wanted to hug my kids before bed. We didn't get that. I told her to my girls all the time that I loved them, gave them kisses, even when they were like embarrassed at my mom, like, why you have to kiss me goodbye at school? I kiss them on the head, whatever. But they're very affectionate, loving people, and they're amazing parents.
I
And
have to
they
tell you,
chose great husbands,
one
so
thing that's been so cool to watch is, I was playing with my daughter. We were playing with kinetic sand last night, and she's 3. So she's like a little
okay.
young for kinetics. She doesn't really have like the coordination,
Yeah.
but she's like trying really hard to like scoop it with the little scoop. And I'm like, wow, that was really good. You're doing so good. And then she does it back to me, which is just like this. She's like, good job, mom. That was really big scoop. I'm like,
Yeah, that's cute.
but
Yeah,
that is how you change it. Like it
that's
truly is, I
right.
think, that simple that they're going to repeat what's said to them.
Right. And our listeners, if they know what the 10 traumas are, they can now be consciously aware they're not doing them within the household.
Mhm.
Or if the other parent is doing it, you pull the parent aside and say, listen, there's 10 traumas we have to be aware of to raise very empowered, confident kids. My daughters were out of the home at 19, supporting themselves. One in California. This is when I lived in Jersey. And the other one was touring and singing. And then she went into television as a host. And now she's a global world coach, one of the top coaches in the world. So, I mean, it starts young. It starts with learning and these experiences where you take them and talk to them. I said, even to the babies, talk to your babies all the time. They may not respond, but they're going to talk really fast and really quickly and understand a lot sooner than parents that don't talk to their babies.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, really, I studied a lot when I was pregnant with Stefana, 39 years ago. And in Philadelphia, there's a place called the Better Baby Institute. And now it's called the Institute for, what is it called? The Better Baby Institute is what it was. If you Google search that, the other one will come up. The Institute for Human Potential. I think that's what it is now. And it's in a Philly suburb, which happened to be 20 minutes from my home. So I listened and read the book, and I'm like, you know what? If this works for children that were mentally challenged, this has got to work great for kids who aren't. Right. So I started doing all these methods for my kids, and my kids were reading by 2.5 years old. So there's so much learning ability from kids from 0 to 4 that many parents are missing out on.
Yes,
And
I've
if
heard that
you,
about trauma too, that people just think, oh, I'll stay in this relationship that's not working, or I'll keep being in a problematic situation because my kids aren't young enough to understand. And when
oh,
they're
believe me, they
older, that's when
understand.
exactly. And when they're younger, they have less of their own ability to regulate their nervous system. Like they
They
can't
they
handle
can't they
anything.
can't cope. So they find different ways. One is shut down, which is freeze. Like they don't say anything, they don't do anything. They learn talking about my feelings is not safe. So they say nothing. Another one that's called an internalizer. As they become teenagers, those are the ones that are self-cutting, self-mutilating. Okay. The externalizers are the ones that yell, fight back, scream, run away, have risky sex, early relationships. Those are the externalizers. So your child would be one or the other. But if you see signs of anything, don't think it's just going to go away. Get someone that's used to working with kids. Just don't get who your insurance assigns, Find someone who's excellent in working with children and adolescents. Now I only work with age 16 and up because I do it on the internet only. With coaching, but it's wonderful to turn a life around.
Mhm.
And I get teenagers that are really lost or smoking pot all the time. And well, they're sad about their future, or they went to college and they have all this college debt and they have no jobs. It's like, what do I do? I'm lost. I don't know. We call this failure to launch, right? They
Mhm.
just can't wrap their head around it. And their stress is so high that they can't calm themselves to focus on what they need to do. So I take a lot of these teenagers and help them get focused on what their dreams and their goals are. Let's make a plan. We break the plan down. So I really like working with the young people. And that age is like 16 to 26
Mhm.
that I work with that, seem a little lost. But yeah, it's important that you teach your kids life skills. Our goal as parents is to launch our kids successfully by the time they're done high school. That's the goal.
So tell me, you said something slightly terrifying earlier, which is that 100% of people have experienced trauma. So as a
Yeah,
parent, there's nothing I can do that's going to, like, to carry, I'm picturing like the high school project where you carry an egg around. We can't fully protect our kids from all trauma. Some of them happen outside the home. Some of them happen to whole communities. None of us had the
that's right.
ability to
Well,
prevent
COVID
COVID.
is happening to everyone.
Exactly.
It's not our choice.
We live in hurricane land. I'm in South Florida as well.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing we can do about that.
That's
So,
right.
what, I mean, how do we, other than just say hire a professional, how do we help our kids process trauma? How do we, you said
You're,
be aware of what you
yeah.
experience so that you don't perpetrate it? Are there other kind of action items that we can have?
Yeah. You're teaching your kids at every chance how to solve problems. So here's an incident. My daughter, the millionaire coach now, cheated on a test in second grade,
In
right?
second
And
grade, what a
second grade.
wild
And I
one.
was shocked because she's a really smart kid and she was in the talented and gifted. She didn't need to cheat. I'm like thinking, so she was like crying and I'm like, it's all right. Let's get to the bottom of it, babe. Let's see what's going on. She goes, well, I was so tired because every morning I have to get up, change the baby, feed him, pack my lunch. And I didn't realize this was going on over at the father's house.
Mm.
So here she's all stressed out going to school. We know, again, when stress is up, cortisol is up, learning and memory is down. So I didn't know this was happening and they didn't say anything that this was happening. They had all this responsibility and they're just children themselves before they get out to the school bus. She's, stressed out.
Parenting, yeah.
So I went into the teacher said, yeah, I was really shocked too. And I said, would you give her an ability to retest? She knows this information. And I said, I just found something out that this is going on over at her father's house. And I had no idea. And I have to change that dynamic. But in the meanwhile, I'd really appreciate if you gave her another chance. So the bottom line is you've got to talk to your kids what's going on and figure it out, right? It's yelling and screaming is not the answer. I never once, I did a podcast with Alexi. She goes, I don't ever remember you yelling at us, not one time. It's like, because that doesn't solve the problem. Talking it through solves the problem. Steph one time ordered pizzas to send to a boy she had a crush on that was not giving her any attention. So I think she sent 10 pizza and my number was tied into Pizza Hut. So they knew me. They called the next day. Hi, how you doing, Riana? Like 10 pizzas were ordered from your house to be delivered to your neighbors. I'm like, what? I was out last night. A babysitter was there. Well, the babysitter didn't know they were doing this. And I went in, I said, so does anybody want to tell me what happened last night to my two daughters? Something unusual that mom should know about. So I just waited and then they told me. I said, okay, so basically 10 pieces were stolen from that place that we order from all the time. What do you think we should do about it? And she starts crying. She goes, I should pay for them. I said, I really think you should, honey. I think that's great. So we'll go to your bank account. We'll pull out the money. And we'll take it over to the manager. Now he told me, look, I make so much money from you throughout the year. You don't have to pay for them. We gave them to the homeless. I said, do me a favor, play along with this because I got to teach my daughter a lesson. Right. But not once did I yell. So she had to go through the process of going to the bank, to her savings and pulling out the money and going to the manager. Sir, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I was pulling a prank on someone who hasn't been nice to me. And I should not have done that. That's considered stealing and I want to pay for the pizzas, right? So you can teach your kids these life lessons because what you're teaching them is, look, challenges will come, mistakes will be made, but how do we clean them up? And it's usually by honor and integrity and telling the truth and admitting your faults, right? Or your mistakes. So this is what you're teaching them from small children. You're teaching them, when they have a problem, well, what do you think you should do? Let's come up with 2 or 3 solutions.
So
and then the third solution was I should write a letter to the mother and apologize for her and the boy. I said, yeah, I think an apology letter is a great idea. So she came up with the solutions.
So
right.
tell me this feels like, and tell me if you think this is wrong, but this feels like a little bit like a tricky path to walk as a parent, because on the one hand, you're processing your own traumas of, speaking for my listeners and myself, perfectionism, people pleasing, etc., wanting to be perfect, wanting to do everything right. And on the other
Mhm.
hand, you're trying to do everything right so that you don't, quote, mess up your kid. Where that's a tricky line, I think. And it doesn't leave a lot of room for people to be human. How do we handle the fact that we are people and we do have our stuff?
Yeah. Well, as clients come to me, many of them are moms with kids, a lot of angry kids because they were in this toxic environment for a long time. And we have to work with repairing that relationship, right? We have to show that child that you love them. And the number one thing I have my parents do, and I rehearse this with them, we come up with the words, they write them down, they say them a few times, and they actually have to apologize to their kids. It's like, let's say an example, it's like, mom really tried her best. I'm so sorry I had to break up the marriage. It's really difficult to have yelling in the house and yelling at you. And, but we're going to be okay. We're going to work as a team. But I just want to say, I'm really sorry for all of this that's happened to you, right? You'll have to learn to apologize to your kids. Then they learn to apologize when they have a
Mhm.
problem or make a mistake. You admit your part if there was, something that you did wrong. But as soon as that parent becomes authentic
Mhm.
and apologizes from the heart and say, can we work on this together? We're a team. Like I have a single mom now out of a toxic marriage. Her teen boy was very angry with her, barely
Mhm.
talked to her. And this is what she did. And she goes, well, you and I, we're a team now. We need each other. Will you work with me to help make things better for you and I? Goes, yeah, mom, I will. I'll help out. And he
Yeah.
wasn't getting a job and he was smoking pot and now he has a job, right? And, he's not acting irrational or, irresponsible is what I
Mhm.
meant to say. So, there's words that you want to say. You just have to be authentically real. Kids
Yeah.
get it. They
Very
just
hard
don't
for those
want
of
their,
us who don't want to disappoint people, right? So it's like, well, I just like to go on pretending that I did everything right when you yelled at them, right?
Mhm.
Like this is we're at the toddler age. We're like, every now and then you're like, I just really need to scream.
Right, right.
And
I know
so
it's hard. It's
it
hard.
yeah, and I
Or when
think
they have their temper
uh-huh,
tantrums.
it's very tempting to have your own adult temper tantrum and just tell yourself and
The key is,
unconsciously tell your kid that it's okay for me to yell and scream and be angry, but it's not okay for you to yell and scream and be angry,
yeah. Now
which
here
is
is a tip. When your child, let's say it's a three-year old, and I witnessed my one grandson doing this, and I saw Alexi do it beautifully. He was crying, having a temper tantrum, storming around, and he was really loud. And she talked calm and slow. Listen, if you're tired, we can all lay down and take a rest. The twins are sleeping right now. Are you feeling frustrated about something that you want to share with me? So she talked slow and calm, and he was loud, but he stopped to hear what she was saying.
mhm,
Right. So it's a psychological trick, because
mhm,
she's just talking and he wasn't first hearing her. Then he stops and she goes, no, I don't want to nap, So she goes, well, okay. Do you want to just sit on the couch and relax and watch one of your shows? Okay.
mhm.
So, but that slow and calm tends to calm down the child with a temper
Slow,
tantrum.
especially. I've actually heard, and I wish I had data for this, but I've heard that children process at a slower pace, and as
Yeah.
adults, we really struggle with that, right? Because you're used to pulling up to the McDonald's drive-through and being able to say, "Hey, I want my,"
Right.
and
Yeah.
your toddler can't do that. They can't process. I need you to sit in your chair, put your bib on, eat your food, stop yelling.
Yeah.
They actually can't mentally process that. And so I think you're right. It's helpful for us as well, right? Like it forces
Yeah.
me to regulate if I'm like,
Right.
I have to lower my voice and slow my speaking pace. But I
Yeah.
think I think what you said about authenticity is really, really helpful. That it's like we all screw up.
We all screw up. And that's what you have to say. We're all humans. We all make mistake. And mommy made a mistake with this.
Hmm.
And it hurt you terribly. And I'm so sorry, babe. Will you forgive me?
Hmm.
Something like that. And they
Exactly.
will, because they love you.
Yeah.
But you have to have that conversation and stop pretending everything's okay. Listen, I got kindergarten kids telling me, here's one story. Miss Riana, my dad comes home and keeps doing the white powder. And then my mom and him fight over that all the time. Father was doing cocaine. Okay, here's another one. My dad doesn't come home and my mom has this new boyfriend in the bed with her.
Oh
That's
boy.
not right, is it, Miss Rihanna? And I'm like, no, it's not a really good idea. So,
It's not a good
parents
idea.
think their kids don't know what's going on. Kids are brilliant,
I know.
so, but they're worried about this all the time in school. That's,
Hmm.
that's on their brains. And these were the types of things that I heard,
Yeah.
so your kids know what's going on.
Yeah. So tell us, you have some freebies on your site that people can get to start working
Yeah,
through some stuff. Can you tell us what you have and how we can get
for
them?
sure. Yes, my website's my name, rianamilne.com. And there you can get the 4 free love tests are for singles and couples. The free ebook, How to Have the Love You Deserve. And this test is in there. The childhood trauma checklist is in there. So make sure you get that. Free book chapter downloads of Live and Love
Mm.
Beyond Your Dreams. I think it's 60 pages of each. And my podcast is called Lessons in Life and Love with Coach Riana Milne. It's on every podcast platform. And YouTube has both audios and videos, I think like 250 of them. And since I've done so much work with kids and a lot of research with them, I've got a lot on parenting and kids and
Mhm.
the whole childhood trauma piece. So I think it would be very helpful for you.
I think all of the love content, which we didn't really dive into a ton today, I think that is so rich for people who are in these, especially young child rearing ages, because it's where, oh God, I wish I could remember who said this. Somebody said, having children is like taking your relationship like a purse and just shaking everything out of the bottom. It's like
It's
all of
it's
the stuff,
it's quite a transition. It really
everything's
is. When
going to
you're
come
just
out.
used to each other, it's a lot of transition. And the second one is even more so. But
Don't say this to me.
I have to say this regarding millennial men. Like, I'm a baby boomer. Okay, I'm over 60. So men in my age category, they didn't do a thing. They would not change a diaper, feed a bottle, shop, grocery shop. They did nothing. And yet we're still working and we do cooking, cleaning,
Mhm.
childcare, everything. I see my son-in-laws, they're great with my grandsons. Like, I'm so proud of them. And I tell them all the time, you're doing a great job. Thank you for being an active, wonderful, loving father. Charles is coaching like 5 teams for the kids. Preston is, balancing twins and the 3-year-old, and
Mhm.
like Alexi's got the newborn. I mean, they're working as a team, and that's really what it takes. Really great communication, really knowing your schedules, getting help when you can, or trading babysitting with friends so you can have a night out, whatever that takes. But, I got to commend the men that are active dads. And believe me, it will really help in your children's self-esteem to have that positive, loving father that's
Absolutely.
not a screamer, not a yeller. That's all the men did back in our
Mhm.
generation. You heard, wait till your father gets home,
Mhm.
right? It's like he's going to yell and scream at you. And so that those relationships were so torn
Mhm.
between the men and the children because they weren't active in their kids' lives, right?
Yeah, I
So,
think this is all just like very, very rich for people to work through in their own love relationships, their relationship with work, all of that. So I really,
yeah.
really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you absolutely want the listeners to hear before we
Oh my
wrap up?
gosh, girl, there's so much I could go
So
into on
much.
this topic. We could talk for hours. That. I'm a real child's advocate. But, if your children's grades are suffering, I just want to say, really look at the dynamic around your home, try and calm everything down. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of strategies for that. If your child is ADHD, get them off sugar, get them off red dye number 2, all organic foods, no chemicals. There's a lot I could teach on that because I worked with those kids. But really the truth is now is the time, right, to create the life you desire and have the love you deserve. Because if you do it for yourself and
Mhm.
heal anything that you're dealing with and with your partner or spouse, and be a team to really raise empowered, confident kids. And I got to tell you, even if one parent is doing the right things and the other one is like a mess, a toxic mess, you can still raise empowered kids if you use the mindset for success. So make sure you pick up the Live book, because that goes all into this whole parenting dynamic that I think would be very helpful.
I love that. I think it's so tempting to just say, I'm going to worry about improving myself after these child rearing years. There's no point. I have to just pour myself into my kids. I can't take care of myself. I can't improve myself. I think that
No, a
it's
happy
so,
lady is a happy mom makes happy kids, right?
yeah.
So you establish your routines early. Like parents should have Saturday night as date night for mom and dad. And kids are like, oh yeah, it's your date night, right? Where
Hmm.
you gonna go? They
Right.
buy into it. Like, this is our routine. You can have Friday, this is mom and dad's night, it's
Hmm.
Saturday night. And of course, if there's a prom Saturday night, then you switch nights, but that's agreed upon.
Nope. Then they're done. They don't get to go.
Right. Yeah, it's
All right.
cute.
Well, thank you so much, Rihanna, for joining us. This has been super helpful. I think the listeners will love it. And we'll have the links to those freebies in the show notes. So make sure you go to the
Okay,
show notes or just go riannamilne.com.
perfect. Thanks so much, Kelly.
Thank you.